COVID-19, according to the CDC, is a respiratory disease caused by SARS-CoV-2, a strain of virus that was discovered in 2019. When the current upperclassmen of University of Oregon learned about it, we were freshmen and sophomores at the time, barely or still adjusting to college. Many of us thought we were getting an extra week off from spring break, but we were not prepared to be trapped at home, scared to get infected. Besides worrying about our respiratory system, we neglected to think about how COVID affected our mental health. Now that everything is slowly going back to normal, our group created a survey on how COVID-19 affected the mental health of upperclassmen students at University of Oregon.
Okay, for our methodology, we decided to use a survey. At the beginning of our survey, we included a trigger warning since we are going to be discussing mental health and things of that nature, as well as provided students that took our survey with resources for their mental health. These questions that we opened with were just to kind of gauge how many hours of sleep a night students were getting both before and after the university transferred to fully remote learning. And then these two questions asked the students to categorize their overall mental health before and after the spring 2020 term when we went to remote learning. These questions kind of gauge more where students' mental health was in their attitudes towards school and also how COVID affected their living situations. This is another question regarding how often students attended classes, how they were feeling towards the future of their loved ones on a scale of 1 to 5. And then this question down here asks students to rank the level of mental health support that they felt they received from the University of Oregon. And then at the bottom, we just asked basic demographic questions as well as thanked them for taking our survey.
Hello, this is Jake Shipley with the Gamer Group, and I'm here to talk about the findings for our project. I think we had a really great survey, and we got a lot of great information and data on this subject of if COVID-19 affected students' mental health. And there were definitely some common themes of this, starting with there was a lot of positive responses for the questions in situations before COVID-19, and the ones for during and after, they tended to be more negative responses. There were multiple reasons to this. I think that we found that one was there was an increase in sleep during or after the pandemic, and I believe that because of this increase in sleep, it led to people not having a lot of time they could use for being productive, and that could definitely take a toll on someone's mental health. Another one was 70% of participants worried about loved ones and their own future. This could definitely have an effect on someone's mental health just because of all the uncertainty that we all had during this time. Overall, COVID definitely had a huge impact on students' mental health, and most of our information points to it being negative. Thank you.
This is Bailey also sharing our findings. We found that there was a spike of more negative results concerning scenarios either during or after the outbreak and the restrictions were enacted. There was a correlation that was negative between higher levels of sleep and lower levels of motivation. There was also a better mental health among students before spring term versus once the regulations began, and only one respondent did not feel anxious or worried about their family and loved ones during the pandemic.
Hey guys, my name is Alexander Akori, and I will be discussing the limitations to our research. To start, we had a particularly small survey sample of only 16 respondents. This makes generalizing our findings more difficult compared to if we had at least 30 or more. Our survey was also not available for responses for a very long time, and this definitely affected our response rate. Thirdly, because of our small survey sample and the possibility for more spurious correlation than causal, some of the data that we collected may be interpreted differently. The changes in behavior and mood represented in the data may have been caused by other forces besides the pandemic. Subject biases may also have been a limitation since we asked a variety of personal questions that surveyees may have not answered 100% truthfully. Lastly, the questions we asked focus on the start of the pandemic, which was in 2020. It is possible that answers given by the subjects were not completely accurate had they not remembered exactly what they were feeling at the time. Thank you.
Some pieces of advice for future scholars who may choose to replicate this study would be to number one, take more time. Allow yourself enough time to get more responses, as we were only able to get 16 with the time that we had, and we would ideally have liked to have at least 30. The next piece of advice would be to have a larger sample size. While taking more time will help with this, there are some other ways to bring in potential respondents, such as talking to them in person, like going door to door or standing on your campus and talking to people walking by, or you could post a survey online as we did, or you could also send the survey out via email and or text. The last piece of advice would be to have more comparative questions. In order to see a more distinctive difference between the behaviors of respondents before versus after the pandemic hit, it may have been helpful to have more comparative questions than there were in this study.